The downfall of Khamzat Chimaev. When it comes to scariest fighters in the UFC, Khamzat Chimaev is always the first name that comes to mind, or used to anyway. Chimaev has had one of the most disappointing careers in the history of the UFC. He went from being one of the biggest prospects in MMA to now, over 4 years later, still not being able to headline a fight. Now, let's compare him to another big prospect who joined a year later than him, Alex Pereira. Since Alex has joined, he's had more title fights than Chimaev has had fights. Alex has become a 2-division champion and may also become a 3-division if he decides to move up and face Aspinall at heavyweight. Now, although I may be personally disappointed with Khamzat's career so far, I can't ignore the rise he had. Chimaev burst onto the scene with a crazy level of dominance. In his first few fights, he made it look almost too easy. He was finishing opponents in record time and barely took any damage himself. His wrestling was top tier, his striking brutal, and he was able to control every second of his fights. He was fighting at both welterweight and middleweight, sometimes just days apart, and was still managed to smash anyone who was in there with. With back-to-back stoppages, it seemed like there was no one that could stand up to his relentless pressure until he faced Gilbert Burns. This was the first time I believe we saw him truly tested inside the octagon. Burns was not intimidated by him in the slightest and came ready for an absolute war. Unlike Chimaev's previous opponents, Burns pushed him to his limits, landing powerful shots and taking the fight into deep waters. The fight turned into a gritty, back-and-forth battle where Chimaev showed heart but also revealed some serious weaknesses, in particular his dodgy striking. Alongside this lackluster performance, Khamzat's rise has been slowed down by several fight cancellations, largely due to health issues which I believe has been caused by his habit of overtraining. He has an intense training style and has pushed his body to the brink, leading to frequent illnesses and fight cancellations. This overtraining has most likely shortened his career and kept him from staying active in the octagon. Now, moving on to UFC 279. This is where I noticed the public's opinion of him really began to change. Khamzat ends up fighting Kevin Holland, where he got back into his usual winning ways in the style we expected from him. But this win was not without controversy, because he was originally scheduled to fight Nate Diaz, but Khamzat missed weight by a whole 7.5 pounds, which led to a last-minute reshuffling of his opponents. Despite the drama, when the fight began, Chimaev wasted no time and took down Holland quickly, securing the win via submission. This dominant performance proved to everyone his ability, but the weight and the pre-fight chaos definitely left a shadow over the win. Then we come to his performance against Kamaru Usman. While a win, it left many feeling underwhelmed. Usman has stepped in on just 24 hours notice, and due to his dodgy knees, he wasn't even at his physical best. Despite these disadvantages, Usman managed to go the distance with Chimaev, which raised an eyebrow considering Chimaev's usual ability to finish fights quickly. While Chimaev dominated early rounds with his grappling, he could not put Usman away. So for a fighter billed as unstoppable, not being able to finish a late replacement past prime Usman was pretty disappointing. Now, in the end, this fight against Robert Whittaker at UFC 311 could be the turning point for Chimaev, but with a tough opponent like Whittaker, nothing is guaranteed. Either way, this weekend will give us answers about Chimaev's future in the UFC.